Mr. President, just shortly after the Bay of Pigs, I asked you how you liked being president. And as I remember, you said you liked it better before the event. Now you've had a chance to appraise your job. Why do you like it, and why do you want to stay in office 4 more years?
Well, I find the work rewarding. Whether I'm going to stay and what my intentions are and all the rest seems to me still a good many months away. But as far as the job of president goes, it's rewarding, and I've given before to this group the definition of happiness of the Greeks. I'll define it again: with full use of your powers along lines of excellence. I find that, therefore, the president provides some happiness.
Yes, Mr. President, there have been persistent reports in recent days that the State Department is negotiating with the junta in the Dominican Republic, looking toward a resumption of full diplomatic relations. Are these reports true? Is there some basis on which we would be willing to recognize the present junta?
Well, there have been conversations in the Dominican Republic to see what assurances can be given regarding the restoration of democratic rule, constitutional rule in the Dominican Republic. We have a charge d'affaires there. Quite obviously, we're interested in that restoration, those assurances of free election. So we are continuing to carry out these discussions, though actually they're relatively informal, and they have reaped no harvest as yet, but we're very much on the that would be our policy, to attempt to see if we can resume relations with the Dominican Republic under assurances of a restoration of constitutional government.
The point was that you and your administration are mismanaging the news and using it to perpetuate yourself in office.
Well, as I've said before, I think it would be unwise at this time to answer or reply to Senator Goldwater. I'm confident that he'll be making many charges, even more serious than this one, in the coming months. And in addition, he himself has had a busy week selling TVA and giving permission to suggesting that military commanders overseas be permitted to use nuclear weapons, attacking the president of Bolivia while he was here in the United States, involving himself in the Greek election. So I thought that it really would be not fair for me this week to reply to him.
Mr. President, back to the question of troop reductions. Are any intended in the Far East at the present time, particularly in Korea, and is there any speed up in the withdrawals from Vietnam intended?
Well, as you know, when Secretary McNamara and General Taylor came back, they announced that we would expect to withdraw 1,000 men from South Vietnam before the end of the year. And there's been some reference to that by General Hawkins. If we were able to do that, that will be our schedule. I think the first unit, the first contingent, would be 250 men who are not involved in what might be called frontline operations. It would be our hope to lessen the number of Americans there by 1,000 as the training intensifies and is carried on in South Vietnam. As far as other units, we will have to make our judgment based on what the military correlation of forces may be. We are becoming increasingly mobile. As the big lift operation suggests, what is important in the case that Mr. Smith was talking about, we not only have these divisions that I described there, but we have, after the 61 experience, we moved equipment for 2 more divisions. So during the big lift, we actually have 7 divisions, so that we're able to move around the world much faster, and with new planes which are beginning to come off the production line, particularly ones in Marietta, Georgia, out of Lockheed and so on, we're going to have increased airlift capacity over the next 2 or 3 years, so naturally our force will be more mobile.
On the basis of your experience in Philadelphia,
could you tell us how many troops there are in Cuba, or Russian troops there are in Cuba now, and what
No, I don't think we can ever give a precise figure. All I can say is that the numbers have steadily been reduced, and in the last 2 months there have been further reductions. And since the 1st of January, there's been a marked decrease in the number of troops in Cuba, according to all our intelligence estimates. I couldn't give you a precise number that is still there, but I can give you the general trend is outward.
Mr. President, since you approved do you think that Premier Khrushchev has actually taken the Soviet Union out of the so-called moon race? And in any case, do you think that the United States should proceed as if there were a moon race?
I didn't read that into his statements. I thought his statement was rather cautiously worded. I didn't get any assurances that Mr. Khrushchev or the Soviet Union was out of the space race at all. I think it's remarkable that some people who were so unwilling to accept our test ban treaty, where there was very adequate area of verification, whatever the Soviet Union was doing, were perfectly ready to accept Mr. Khrushchev's very guarded, careful, cautious remark that he was taking himself out of the space race, and use that as an excuse for us to abandon our effort. The fact of the matter is the Soviets have made an intensive effort in space. There's every indication that they are continuing, and that they have the potential to continue. And I would read Mr. Khrushchev's remarks very carefully. I think he said before anyone went to the moon there should be adequate preparation. We agree with that. In my opinion, the space program we have is essential to the security of the United States because, as I've said on many times before, it's not a question of going to the moon, it's a question of having the competence to master this environment. And I would not make any bets at all upon Soviet intentions. I think our experience has been that we wait for deeds unless we had a system of verification. We have no idea whether the Soviet Union is going to make a race for the moon or whether it's going to attempt an even greater program. I think we ought to stay with our program. I think that's the best answer to Mr. Khrushchev.
Mr. President, still continue to